So before we get started, I want to just clear up just a few things. First of all, we are going to turn in our chapter 1 stuff tomorrow, right? So it'll be due at the beginning of class. If you want to turn it in now or at the end of class today, that's fine. If you want to, sorry, automatically I got ripped, got ripped through that. Anyway, football, sorry, bad habit. So, all that stuff is due at the beginning of class tomorrow. You can have up until that time to turn that in. I want to make sure to clear something else up. You do not have to do the essential questions. I think we talked about that yesterday or whatever, but you do not have to do the essential questions. They are just for you, right? You don't have to worry about it. If you want to do it, do it. If not, that's fine too, but you're not going to turn them in either way. It's not going to be graded or anything like that. Those are more or less just kind of for you to organize some thoughts and make sure you understand the major ideas from this chapter. Okay? Last, but certainly not least, we are turning in our documents tomorrow, but if assuming you have those done, which you should have, right? You have no homework for tonight, right? No homework for tonight. We are not going to start chapter 2 documents until Friday. So you don't have any homework tonight. If you want to get started on that, that's fine. I did post that chapter 2 stuff yesterday. So you have access to that already, but none of that's going to be due. The first document will be due on Friday. Okay? Sound good? Questions? Clear as mud? Yeah? Picking up what I'm laying down here. We clucking big chicken? Smell what I'm stepping in? Cool. All right. So what we want to do is continue looking at the Puritans. So we talked about how the people of Virginia, the people of Jamestown, they're going to be, let me phrase. Were they a cohesive group? Yes, I understand they came over on ships together, but were they a cohesive group? Did they know each other? Were they families? Were they well acquainted? No. They were random people from all over England who slapped together on a ship and just happened to be going to the same place. They were not a cohesive group. The Puritans are going to be a cohesive group. Okay, they know each other. They are familiar with each other. They have similar beliefs, similar values. Okay, and as we'll find here in chapter 2, not to give too much away, one of our documents will we'll compare it or really contrast it to our other document from yesterday. They are way more diverse as a group as well, and we'll kind of get to that here in just a little bit with our document. But the reason they are leaving England is not the same as the people in Jamestown and Virginia. The people in Jamestown and Virginia are more or less coming for economic opportunity and for a fresh start. The Puritans are largely coming because they were forced out by the English crown due to their religious beliefs, right? They believed that the Anglican Church was way too similar to the Catholic Church and that it needed to be purified. They kept critiquing, criticizing, and hammering away at the Anglican Church. And pretty soon the Anglican Church, run by the state, run by the government, pretty much, or at least aligned with the government, couldn't take it anymore. So it was a mutually beneficial decision largely based around religion. Like, for example, one of their more controversial beliefs is actually still a mainstream Christian belief in some denominations, most notably Baptist, an idea called predestination, which basically says that you are either destined for heaven or hell, and there's nothing you can do to change it. That you're either destined for heaven or hell, and there's nothing you can do to change it. It has been predestined by God. Some people were chosen by God. They're actually called the elect. Some people were chosen by God to go to heaven. Some people were chosen to go to hell. And again, there's nothing you can do about it. Now, this is a slippery slope. Because if there's nothing you can do about it, game on, let's party. Let's do whatever we want. If I'm saved, I can't lose my salvation. But if I'm going to hell, there's nothing I can do to change it either. So why not have fun? Please.
How do you know which?
That's the problem. You're exactly right. The problem is you don't know, and that's exactly what the Puritans would say. You don't know which of the two you are, so you need to behave as though you are one of the elect. You need to behave as though you're one of the elect. Now, of course, if you're really thinking, you understand that this takes away one of the major things that makes us human: free will. We can choose to believe whatever we want to believe. Okay? And of course, this is exactly the rub with predestination and why some other mainstream Christian religions or denominations do not adhere to the idea of predestination. So, bottom line, it was a mutual understanding that the Puritans would leave England, go to the New World. And they choose to settle, they actually wanted to settle in what is today New York, but they ended up settling just north of there in Massachusetts. And before they even set foot on the shores of the New World, they create a document that is really one of the earliest examples of a social contract in Western history, called the Mayflower Compact, or the Mayflower Agreement, if you want to think of a synonym for the compact, So, what exactly did it say? What were their goals here in the New World? And who was involved in the creation of this document? And what does that say about New England or Massachusetts society? That's really what we want to take a look at here right now. So talk about that with your partner for a few minutes, and then we'll come back.
They all agree to stay subjects to the crown. King James and the crown possess the power according to the compact, advanced Christian faith amongst the country. Previously, other powers have come to gain riches and power to religious reasons. I said all the people outside the group were men, society was
I said on all
they were saying that subjects
And then, what I saw for the last question, that there was a lot of and they would be the leaders of their new colony.
Okay, so people from
Yeah, you look at the document, you see like you said on Harvard for I was thinking that they would be the leaders.
All right, let's take a look here at the Mayflower Compact and see a little bit about what we could discover. First of all, what were they agreeing to do? What were they agreeing to do? What was the agreement, the compact? What was the agreement? We're all going to what?
combine ourselves together.
Okay, good. That's exactly right. Literally word for word. Good. Right? That we are going to combine ourselves together in what they call a civil body politic. In other words, are we going to be fractured or united? United. We're all going to join together. Right? We all agree to form, kind of this group. We're all going to follow the rules. Okay? Which makes total sense because who's making the rules? They are. So how illogical would it be if you make the rules and then don't follow them? Then you'd have to be elected to the member of the United States Congress. Sorry, cynical, couldn't help myself. Right? So, that would be completely illogical if you make the rules and then don't even follow them. That'd be like, fighting with yourself and then losing an argument. Talking to yourself and losing an argument, which I'm not saying that hasn't happened, but it's helped since I've taken the pills. Now, sorry, I'm really not that crazy. Well, I'm kind of crazy, but I'm not that crazy. I just ignore the bad voices and I only listen to the good ones. So what we'll find then is that they all agree that they're going to help each other out, that they're going to form this civil body politic, as they say, and they're all going to follow the rules. They're all going to get along. They're all going to hold hands, sing kumbaya, and all that other good stuff. Laugh, cry, share some hugs. Actually, that'd be the hippie commune, but that's pretty close. Anyway, so they're all going to get together. They're all going to agree to do these things. Now, who's going to be in charge? Now, this is a tough question. Officially, much like the people of Virginia, who's going to be in charge? And they have to say this because of where they came from. Who's going to be? The King James, right? Hey, you're in charge. Well, let's be honest. Is he really? No. Just like in Virginia, it's lip service. They're really going to be able to control themselves. But keep in mind, Puritans, to them, who is really going to be in charge? God. God is really going to be in charge, right? They're going to take their cues from him and from the Bible. If you want to think, and there's no judgment when I say this, if you want to think of it, the Puritans today would be probably classified as fundamental Christians. They believe that the Bible is 100% absolutely true, literally. God literally created the world in 6 days. 24-hour days, right? The world is only 5,000 years old or 7,000 or whatever it is. So they would fall into this category as well. So what were their goals then? Unlike the Spanish and some of these other people, who gave this lip service, what was one of their stated goals, Mr. Brown?
They're coming to the New World to advance the Christian faith.
Especially among which group of people? The natives. They are largely here to Christianize the natives. I mean, think about it. This sounds like a good idea if you're a Puritan, but it's also a lot of pressure. Because here you are criticizing the Anglican Church, and now what do you have the opportunity to do? Create your own. Now it's time to put up or shut up. It's time to put your money where your mouth is. Now they have to try to create a society that they feel lives up to their ideals. And one of those ideals is indeed the spreading of Christianity among the natives. We will find that they will be eminently unsuccessful in that endeavor. Unless you mean by Christianize, you mean slaughter. Because that's really what ended up happening. And we'll talk more about that later today. Now, God is in control. But we also get some clues about who will lead the day-to-day operations of the colony itself. What do you notice about every single person that signed the Mayflower Compact? Every single one. They're all what? They're all dudes. They're all men, okay? And we call this type of society a patriarchy. Massachusetts will be a patriarchy, a society dominated by men. Now, if you think about it, this makes total sense according to their religious beliefs, right? In the Bible, who does God set over everybody and everything else? Men. Who was created first? Adam. He is the leader of the family, and so too the man should be the leader of the family, and so too the leader of the colony. So patriarchy. Now, the opposite of this is a matriarchy, a society or a relationship dominated by women. You might know this by another name. It's called marriage. Now, sorry, that was a joke. Don't tell my wife I said that. You should get sued for that. Ellie, I'm looking at you. Yeah, if you tell her anything, you're in deep trouble. No, you think I'm kind of a happy wife, happy life. Gentlemen, just remember that phrase and you'll be stellar. You'll be stellar. Anyway, so a patriarchy. This is definitely going to be a society dominated by men. Now, there's another qualifier here that I want to mention just real briefly because we can use it to contrast with other things. What do you notice before the names of a handful of men, like about a quarter of the men? What do you notice? What title? Mr. Now, there's two things that kids guess that this could represent. One of the guesses is marriage. It's a good guess. It's not accurate, but it's a good guess. What other thing, I guess, standing, could the phrase or the title Mr. represent? Mr. Gakin, what do you think?
Like master?
Like what?
Like master of.
Oh, perhaps. That's actually a really good idea. That's the first time I've heard that. Like a master, not Mr., but master in the sense of like an artisan or a craftsman, yes? Okay, that's a good guess. You're on the right track. You're really on the right track.
Middle class rather than lower.
Okay, what this denotes is wealth. That these people are most likely of at least what socioeconomic class? They're probably at least middle class. So think about that, right? Think about how different now they are going to be from the people of Virginia. The people of Virginia were, again, what were their qualifiers, did we say? We said there were 5. Anybody remember? What were the 5? Poor, single, young, white, men. Okay? How many of those are going to apply to the Puritans? To a certain, some, but are they going to be poor? Not really. Are they going to be single? We'll find that that's not going to be true either. There will be some single men. A lot of families though, more women. Okay. Are they? So we have they're going to be white, young men. We could argue the young as well. Some of them are going to be again middle class. If you're middle class. Do you think people will just like graduate from high school or college and are automatically middle class? No. It takes years to build up wealth. So of the 2 qualifiers, we said they're white. Basically, we're down now to white men. Similar or different from Virginia? They're quite different. And guess what? The difference is the North and the South, they've been different from, well, pretty much always. And as we've kind of alluded to, those differences will manifest themselves by 1860 into what? A civil freaking war. They've been different from the get-go over a variety of things and a variety of reasons. And we'll kind of flesh that out more as we go along. So, think about this. Middle-class people coming to Massachusetts, or what is today Massachusetts. And we're going to find that the Puritans, their population will increase at a greater rate than in Virginia. And there's several reasons for that. One of these reasons is because there are no malaria-bearing mosquitoes that far north. So in other words, what happens to the death rate in Massachusetts? Yeah, it's lower, much lower than Virginia. Not to mention the fact, what were the people of Virginia almost exclusively growing? What crop? Yeah, you can't really eat that. Can't really eat that. Tobacco doesn't grow in Massachusetts. It's too cold. So what were they forced to grow? Food. So their diets are healthier. Less disease, living longer. Not to mention the class, they're middle class. Not to mention the fact they're middle class so they can buy the things that they might need. Think about it from the perspective of somebody living in England at the time. Would you rather go to Virginia and roll the dice about maybe, about a 60% chance of dying, or would you rather go to Massachusetts? Massachusetts, and it's not close. So people begin to immigrate to Massachusetts in larger numbers than in Virginia. Less chance of dying, more comfortable lifestyle. Healthier, longer lives. We'll find that will pose a little bit of a problem, though. Okay, and we'll talk more about that here in just a second. But for the Puritans, they see this as yet another example of their religion, that God is sending them. God is attracting people to Massachusetts. In other words, according to their governor, John Winthrop, they want to make Massachusetts a city on a hill, a shining example of what Christianity should be. And by the way, this is paraphrasing a passage from the book of Matthew, in which, Jesus exhorts his people to, let your light shine for all others to see, right? Be the city on the hill. And he says this is exactly what we're doing. This doesn't mean that everybody is getting along, though, right? They are not holding hands. They are not lighting candles. They are not singing Kumbaya. This is not going to be a happy marriage, because keep in mind, is there a separation of church and state? And the answer is no. The church is the state. Like in many Massachusetts villages and towns, the Puritan church will tie political participation to church attendance. The only way you can vote is if you go to church. Okay? Now, think about all these people who are coming into Massachusetts. Do you think all of them are Puritans? So what about those that aren't? They're ostracized. They either have to convert to the Puritan church or attend the Puritan church or sacrifice their voting rights. And Roger Williams thinks this is atrocious. As he famously says, forced religion stinks in the nostrils of God. In other words, God would want people to come to him willingly, not feel compelled to do so. And he will also blast the Puritans for their hypocrisy in their treatment of Native Americans. Because despite all of their lofty ideals and stated goals as it pertains to natives, they are fundamentally flawed. Because just like the Spanish and just like just about all the other Europeans, how did they view the natives? As what? Less than, inferior, savages. And that is not a good starting ground for a mutually beneficial relationship. So for his views, Roger Williams is kicked out of Massachusetts. He's kicked out. And instead, he goes directly to the south of Massachusetts and he buys land from the Native Americans and forms his own colony called Rhode Island. A tiny colony, by the way. It is the smallest state in the Union. To give you an idea of how small it is, east to west, it is basically the same distance as from here to Mitchell. And north to south, it's about the same distance as from here to Brookings. It's not big. It's not big at all. Okay? But that is where he will go. Anne Hutchinson will later have to join him because she too is kicked out. She questions the doctrine of predestination. She also opposes a lot of their views on Native and treatment of Native Americans, just like Roger Williams. And she too will then join Williams once she is banished from Massachusetts. Later on, she will even settle further to the south. She will move essentially out of Rhode Island to New York. And there, ironically, she and her family, her husband and her 8 kids, are murdered by Native Americans just outside of modern-day New York City. So it's interesting because people want to move to Massachusetts, but what the Puritans don't understand and are kind of fighting is that as more and more people move in, this makes Massachusetts more diverse. And they're not happy about that necessarily. They're happy as long as they can follow the Puritan rules. But if they're unwilling to follow the Puritan rules, they don't want them. And this is why it's important for us. Because those people that are not wanted, they leave Massachusetts and guess what they go and form? Other colonies. So what's happening to the land area that England is coming to conquer in the New World? It's growing. Right? Some of these exiles, they will form Rhode Island. They will form Connecticut. They will form New Hampshire. They will form Maine. Right? They will break away and they will form their own colonies because they don't want to put up with all the Puritan ideology. Okay? And this is important for us, of course, because now we call those colonies states. Okay? Okay. There is Roger Williams on the left, who, by the way, to me, totally freaking looks like a 1970s British rock band, right? I mean, he looks like he should be in Led Zeppelin or something. It's so funny. Anyway, and then there is Anne Hutchinson on the right. Now, so the good news for England anyway, for the English, the good news is they are spreading. They're spreading out throughout what we would today call the northeastern part of the United States, right? They are, they're spreading into Connecticut and Rhode Island and New Hampshire and Maine and Vermont and into New York. They're spreading. But the problem is just like Virginia, okay? The Virginians, they plant tobacco, use up the ground, and then move west. And then they plant, use it up, move west. And as they continue to move, who does this bring them into conflict with? The natives. And it's the same thing now with the Massachusetts vote, with the Puritans and other groups. As more and more English arrive, it makes more and more conflict with the natives inevitable. And now, what happens is, it really challenges their stated beliefs. Their stated beliefs had been to Christianize the natives and view them as Christian brothers and sisters. However, when it comes to challenging them for resources, we will find that they will fail in their stated values. A really good example here is the Pequots. The Pequots are really the early example of this. The Pequots will begin to raid many of the villages and towns along the frontier, and the English will respond in kind. And in 1637, it ultimately culminates with the English and several Indian allies in essentially wiping out the Pequots by burning them alive in a village, in a hut, really. What they called a longhouse. It was a central meeting house for many tribes of the Northeast. Okay. FYI, random side note. If I could choose a way to die, it would not be being burned alive. I have 3 fears. 3 ways I don't want to go. 1, drowning. I hate water. That's why I don't shower. Just kidding. I hate open water. That's true. I do not like lakes. I do not like rivers. I don't like any of that stuff. It just scares the crap out of me because I'm scared of drowning. FYI, it's also worth noting I've never taken 1 minute of swimming lessons. Number 2, being burned alive. Holy crap, ow. Like, no, Okay, the worst one, 3, being boiled. It's a combination of 1 and 2. For real? Okay, no bueno, not gonna happen, all right? Being burned alive, no thanks, don't wanna happen. Now, there's a couple things I do wanna mention about this though that are actually on task. The key word, the key phrase here, Indian allies. The British and other Europeans, or the English and other Europeans, will be very clever in how they go about this. They will very adeptly and cleverly use Native American tribes against each other. They will use Native tribes against each other. They will make alliances with the ancient enemies of the tribes that they're having problems with. And in doing so, let's be honest, what happens to both tribes in the long run? They're both wiped out. Right? Yeah, they're both wiped out. Okay? So they will use Native tribes against each other. And from the Native perspective, the sad thing for them is that they never what? They never unite. They never link up. Had they done so, had they united, had they put aside their differences, they could have very easily defeated the English, and even later on, they could have easily defeated the Americans. We'll actually talk about this a little bit more with a Shawnee chief called Tecumseh, both around and after the War of 1812. He tried desperately to make an Indian alliance among the tribes. It never worked, though. Had it worked, it's very likely America would stop at the Appalachian Mountains today. It's entirely possible. It didn't, so we didn't. All right? Now it gets even better though, because as the English continue to expand here, they will bump into even more tribes. And another example of this is the Wampanoags. who are just to the south of the Massachusetts colony, and their chief Metacom, who ends up getting muskets or rifles. Okay, and this, I guess, in this case, muskets. If you guys know anything about guns, you know the difference between a musket and a rifle. It's the barrel, or the inside of the barrel, to be more specific. But Metacom will obtain gunfire from whom do you think?
That's Spanish.
You're really close.
Portuguese.
Keep going. The French and the Dutch. So what we're going to find is that, keep in mind, now that the Protestant Reformation is over, is it just the English that want a piece of this New World pie? The others do too. France and the Dutch, more or less, they want a piece of this pie too. So what we're going to find is that old world political rivalries and hatred will be transplanted into the New World. They don't want the English taking too much territory and claiming too many resources. So just like the English did, they will use the Native Americans against the British, or in this case, English. They will use the Native Americans. In other words, think of it this way. The New World will be the new battleground for the Europeans. And the natives are caught in the middle. The natives are caught in the middle of this new battleground. By the way, basically, we just described the background of the French and Indian War. That's essentially what the French and Indian War was. It was a European war fought in the New World amongst the natives and with the natives. Okay? So now that the natives have firearms, now that the natives have guns, what does this do to the number of English dead? Goes up and increases dramatically. More firepower, deadlier firepower. Okay? And the English will not only get super pissed at the French, they will take it out on the Wampanoags. And the result is one of the more brutal incidences of the early English New World. They will raid the villages of the Wampanoags. They will not only kill, but to say the word butcher is not an understatement. They will take war trophies, and I'm not talking like, little trophies that you got when you were in like third grade soccer. Okay, most improved, yay! That's not what I'm talking about. Okay, biggest left foot, awesome, best ever. Okay, that's not what we're talking about here. Okay, we are talking about like the cutting off of ears, noses, fingers. This is one of the first documented incidences of taking of scalps. Okay, where you guys know how that works, right? You just basically take their hair, take a knife at their hairline, cut straight back and pull up, and it just rips off. Okay? Of course, the natives claim we started it, we claim the natives started it, and then everybody started doing it and didn't really stop. In fact, by the time, fast forward 200 years, and the United States Army will pay you for Indian scalps. By the 1860s and 70s, the United States Army would pay you for Indian scalps. How demented is that, right? But here's the thing. Was that new? No. That sort of brutality and taking of war trophies that started hundreds of years prior. So the English and their Indian allies will do just what they did to the Pequots. They will attack, overwhelm them, and essentially wipe them out. Even Metacom will have his head cut off and put on a spike. Okay? Now, this is called the Pequot War, obviously. With the Wampanoags, it's called King Philip's War because we nicknamed Metacom King Philip after their hated enemy, King Philip of Spain. Right? We equated the two. We hate him so much, he's almost as bad as King Philip. In fact, let's just nickname him King Philip because we hate him too. There you see King Philip, wow. Metacom or King Philip, depending on your perspective, as well as check out this map. A lot of these tribes are no longer with us today. They are wiped out through disease or through warfare. Another thing that you might note is that a lot of these names sound familiar. Like, for example, the Massachusetts tribe. That's how we got the name of the colony, Massachusetts. In fact, if you look at the 50 states of the United States, I think it's like 38 of them, if I remember correctly, 38 of them or so are Native American tribes or words. In fact, we're living in one of them. In fact, we are surrounded, every state we are surrounded by is a Native American name or word. In fact, so is our county, Minnehaha, which in Lakota means laughing water, which they named after the Big Sioux Falls, which, by the way, Sioux Falls, okay? So, or Lakota Avenue, or Sioux Boulevard, whatever you want to, I mean, however long you want to take this, I mean, it's all over the place. So, this is not new though. They've started, I mean, how insulting is this? We're going to wipe you out, and then we're going to take your name and make it ours. You want me to kick you in the cojones now or later? I mean, talk about adding salt to the wound, man. That'd be insult to injury. Okay. The last thing we want to talk about here for today is taking a look at another type of colony here. Okay? Mr. McManus, you with us? All right, we're not playing games, are we? Because that would make me very unhappy. So what we're going to do is we're going to find that there will be a different kind of colony. So clearly, Virginia was founded as a way for economic opportunity for the people. Yes? Okay. Massachusetts was founded on religious freedom. Cool. But there will be other colonies that are started basically as a way to make money off the people. And we call these proprietary colonies. Now, if you look at the first four letters, prop, sounds a lot like, starts like property. Or maybe if you go to a restaurant and you go full on Karen and demand to speak to the manager, like, oh my gosh, I demand to speak to the manager. I'm a Karen, look at my hair. Sorry, took that a little far. All right. By the way, keep it going, Saber, you're going to be a Karen here. Haircut, man. I'm a little jealous, I'm not going to lie. It's like flowing and feathered and everything. Glorious. You fit right in. You should be White Goodman. You should be White Goodman from Dodgeball.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Just dye your hair. Get a mustache would be awesome. Dude, epic. I just called it. You owe me.
All right.
So if you go full on Karen mode here, Karen mode engaged, and a guy might walk out and he would say, I'm the proprietor of this establishment. And what he means is, I'm the owner. Okay? So in other words, here's how this will work. The king will grant ownership of large tracts of land in the New World. And in the case of, say, Maryland, he will grant him land, a noble land in the New World. So the proprietor, the owner, dare I say, the landlord, the landlord will be, in this case, Lord Baltimore. That's his formal title, which, please tell me you understand that's why they call it Maryland. Okay. And then also, his real name, that's his title, Lord Baltimore. His name is George Calvert, which is where they get the name of a really crappy Canadian whiskey called Lord Calvert. Not that I would know, because I prefer Irish whiskey. Anyway, so George Calvert will be granted a huge tract of land. Now, it's interesting, Lord Baltimore, George Calvert, whatever, he is the guy that is one of the very few nobles who is still openly Catholic. So he views Maryland as maybe a haven for other Catholics in England who want to come to the New World and practice their religion freely. Okay? And by the way, think about the name. Mary Land, the Virgin Mary. Maryland. Okay? Now, here's the thing. He will allow people to rent the land from him. So you pay the landlord. That's supposed to be an I. I have horrible handwriting and I apologize profusely for that. Or a Q, I mean. They pay him quit rent. Or rent for short. Okay? Now, a lot of times they don't have money, so how will they pay rent?
Like resources.
Sure, the resources. Livestock, crops, whatever the case might be, exactly. Okay? But he is the landlord and you pay him rent. So he is the proprietor, the owner of that colony, and as a result, you have to pay him basically to live there. In other words, let's be honest. In that case, are proprietary colonies really that much different than what they left? No, not really. Another example of proprietary colonies are the Carolinas. Named, by the way, after one of the royal family members, Caroline. Founded and given to wealthy plantation owners from Barbados, a Caribbean island down here, an English island in the Caribbean. The Carolinas were founded mostly as a trading hub. The idea is that they could trade sugar and other goods from Barbados here to Carolina, and then from Carolina all the way up to England, and we kind of form a triangular type of trade like so. Finished products from England will go to the New World, either to Barbados or Carolina, and we're taking raw materials and resources back to England. So they need a major port, and they find a perfect port that they name after another member of the royal family named Charlestown. Named after one of the princes, Charlestown. And then, of course, after the American Revolution, we don't want it to sound so English, so we drop the W and we kind of slur it. Charleston. Right? We take out the W, Charleston. FYI, really delicious candy. Charleston Chew, oh yeah. Frozen, they'll break your teeth. So Charleston will be founded as a major trading hub. And what we'll find then is that people begin to arrive in South Carolina, different kinds of people. And what's interesting is they will begin to farm and grow other kinds of stuff too. Rice, indigo, stuff like that. So let's hit the pause button here. What can we say about the English New World? Is it increasingly diverse or decreasingly diverse? Increasingly diverse. Different religions, different genders, different ages, different socioeconomic statuses. Now, I understand that some of you are going to say, oh yeah, they're still white. I understand that. But is that always going to be true though? No. Unfortunately, slaves will enter into the mix. Eventually, we will talk about other nationalities. Germans, Irish, Scottish will enter the mix. Okay? We'll talk about the French. We'll talk about the Dutch. So what we're going to find, and my point here, is that, let's be honest, from the get-go, was America a fairly diverse place already? And it's only going to become more diverse as time goes on. Okay? So take that, white supremacists. America's always been a diverse place, and we always probably will. Well, not probably. We always will. Okay. So we're going to pause there for today. Again, keep in mind, you do not have an assignment for tomorrow unless you did not get your assignment for today done. So make sure you have that ready to go. If you want to submit it now, if you want to turn it in now, go for it. I have no problem with that. If not, that's fine too. If they're not due, Chapter 1 documents are not due until the beginning of the hour tomorrow, and the essential questions are never due. Those are only for you. Questions? All right.